Welcome to the big episode number 1 of the Castbar. Warlords of Draenor has launched, and so have we. Today we will be stepping through the portal into this new world, and we will see what we can do within it. We discuss our personal experiences and go exploring within the complications of an expansion launch. Answer a few of your questions and review a shadowy dungeon from the Burning Crusade. Enjoy. And if you're listening to this, then I am thanking you now, because you are listening to our very first episode that we recorded, and that means that it's not me listening to it for the third time to make sure we don't screw anything up. So thank you so much. This is the Castbar, the World of Warcraft podcast channeling your content with no interrupts. Today with me I have Evan.
How you doing, man?
And Florian.
Excited and ready to go.
So thankfully, we have managed to get this up and running together, and here we are. How are you guys doing?
Just great, man. You know what my weekend's been like.
The same as everybody else's. Queues and games and lack of sleep.
It sounds about right.
Yeah, that's definitely been my weekend.
Well, yours has been a fun weekend of internet joy, hasn't it?
Sort of. I've had to fight to try to stay online. Then when I was online, I had to fight my way through the queues. And then usually when I'm around 10th or 15th person in line in the queue, I would get disconnected. And then go back into the queue, and then wait through the queue again. And then when I'd get in, I'd lag out after about 10 minutes and get disconnected again.
Oh, no.
But I was able to make some progress because I am very tenacious, if nothing else.
Well, we will be discussing that very shortly, but the biggest thing in news, of course, which we'll be moving into right now. So today in the news, the biggest thing that everyone is probably excited about, Warlords of Draenor has launched. And with it, so are we. Have you guys got to play any?
Yeah, the Timeless Isle is barren. I'm getting all the rare spawns all to myself. It's wonderful.
Are you really doing that right now?
No, I'm not.
Oh my god.
Well, this would be a good time for it, if you were still into that sort of thing.
I need to go see if Golganar is there. I really want that odd polished stone, the one that allows you to turn things into stone when you have a chance to kill them. He has like a 40-hour spawn. It's so rude.
Yeah, it's like free Reddit karma right there. It's the only toy that gives you Reddit karma.
That's so terrible. So, we're going to try and keep the spoilers a little bit light because this episode is only out after about 4 or 5 days after the expansion launched. We know there's been problems, so people might not have been able to get as much of the game in as we have, or they've just been having problems with connection, or they've been getting booted out of queues, or who knows what. So we will try and keep the spoilers light. We'll mostly be talking about the intro, about some of the neat things we've come across, little quality of life changes. We'll touch on garrisons, although we plan on going into depth on those later. But for now, we'll try and keep the spoilers a little bit away so that you guys have a chance to actually get in the game and get caught up and stuff like that, so that when we talk about them, you will hopefully have already seen them. Now, in the future, if I don't give you this disclaimer, it's every man for himself. I'm sorry.
And I'm really actually glad that so many of the other podcasts that actually had beta testers didn't reveal as much as they might have, because I was really surprised pleasantly by a lot of the stuff I was able to experience for myself.
No, definitely. And, like, the spoiler areas that you were able to get to, like, if they put all of the cutscenes up on Wowhead and stuff like that in MMO Champion, that was a choice. I didn't watch any of them. I didn't want to watch any of them because I knew I would be watching them.
Yeah, same here.
But one thing we will talk about, though, is the intro, the introduction quest, the first step through the Dark Portal. Because I hope that you have done this by now. Everyone, it doesn't take that long, and it's pretty epic. It definitely gives you this perspective into what's going on. So, Florian, what was your first step through the Dark Portal like?
It was awesome. I've got to say that. I think the Dark Portal intro quest line, after going through the Dark Portal and getting established with a garrison, that whole quest line where you're hanging out with Khadgar, fighting the Iron Horde, is probably one of done quest lines that Blizzard has had so far. And that's saying something because this entire expansion so far has been filled with really well done questing. One thing I can say for sure is that it definitely helps to establish the characters more solidly. Like Khadgar, for example, we've always been told Khadgar's a powerful mage. He's an archmage. He's one of the best mages in the world. But it's entirely a different thing when you see him using magic to, say, tear a dam apart casually like it's not even a thing. So I think they did really well in terms of establishing the characters there.
No, I can completely agree because, like, you know, if you don't read the books and if you don't really delve into the lore in the non-gameplay, you might not even really know who Khadgar is, what he has done. I mean, people will more readily recognize what Thrall has done than who Khadgar is, and he's definitely, his power is very established, as you were describing. I want to be able to cast 5 or 6 arcane blasts all at once while I run into a room, because that sounds fantastic. But that's just me. I guess if people want to settle for, you know, their 1 million crit chaos bolts, I guess I can see the appeal in that too, although have had that taken away. Evan, what were your first steps through the Dark Portal? What were your feelings as you went through that red glowy goo?
Well, I'll tell you what, the first thing about going through the Dark Portal was 2:30 in the morning. I got up at the exact time the expansion released on Thursday night. Or Thursday morning, rather, and I have to put it in that context because you're there with all the people who wanted to be there first, you know. Everybody was flooding through. It was crazy. There was adrenaline. Everybody was sleep-deprived. Everybody was cold, hanging out in their blankets and pajamas with coffee in their office computer rooms in the wee hours of the morning. So it was kind of a neat shared experience there. There were some hang-ups, you know, the quests are a little bit buggy. They hadn't fixed anything yet. You know, the bug tickets are just starting to flow in. So if you got caught up, snagged on a repeating quest cinematic trailer or something like that, bugged out, teleported away, you just had to kind of roll with the punches and keep on trying to make it through the pack, you know? And so I skipped out on a little bit of the story, the character introductions. I was just trying to get out of there so I can get ahead of everybody. That's kind of my main objective when I was playing at that point. So I look forward to going through there in an alt and really digging into the story a little bit better.
So you were trying to get ahead of the lag?
Exactly. You have to get you have to get away from all the areas that people are flooding. People are getting in the same mobs. People are trying to use the same items. You know. But I think everybody experienced that once or twice. Everybody's trying to click on the item. The item only lets one person at a time click on it. You gotta get past all those areas first.
Yeah, I saw pictures on Reddit of people on servers actually getting in line. Like, they were actually polite enough to stand in line and wait their
I think
turn.
that was Photoshop. There's no way. I can't imagine that having happened.
That definitely didn't happen on Wormrest Accord. I can assure you it was a total and complete mess. A fun mess, but still a mess.
My journey into Draenor took place on Friday night because I was online and I was playing Wednesday night, Thursday morning, but I had to work in the morning, and so about the time that the expansion launched, I was going to bed. Now, I had the fortunate thing of being in Alaska, so their whole little thing of being, like your thing of being up at 2:30, I was up at 11 when the expansion launched. So there's that. That was definitely nice, but at the same time I was like, I need to get up and go to work. I didn't even bother going through like the portal because I knew I'd get too excited and it would probably stay up too late. So I just was like, click, awesome, thanks. All right. And then Friday the queues were in there and I got through the queue right in time. No, Thursday the queues were there, and I got through the queue just in time to go to bed. So, didn't play on Thursday itself, and then Friday, I was able to wait through the queue and play a little bit by staying up late.
Yeah. I had to get up early. I had to get up early and go through the Dark Portal because if I didn't, I wouldn't have gone through the entire workday without breaking my own arm just so I could get out of there and play.
Well, I would have thought the same thing until I went online and saw that everyone was having this horrible experience with lag and what have you. and the queues. So I was like, and people were reporting sometimes like 8-10 hour queue times, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not sad I didn't take off work then, because it sounds like it would have been ruined.
Well, it wasn't really that bad. I also stayed up and got in at launch time, which surprisingly was actually 15 minutes before midnight, which was very generous of Blizzard.
Mm-hmm.
But I really had no problems for the majority of the time. It wasn't until the quest right before you establish your garrison, where you have to run around and click on tree flags.
Right.
That was the only real place I had a problem, because everyone was completely swarming those flags. Everything else just kind of worked pretty well. There were a whole bunch of people, but it's an invasion, so that really kind of makes sense in context of the game.
Right, and there was a few things I noticed with that, and with not just the quest flags, but I even like once you get your garrison established a little bit, you can like harvest the lumber, and then stuff like mining nodes and like herbalism nodes. I feel like those are very few and far between. I don't know if I'm just not getting them, and I'm seeing the occasional one that I'm able to make it to, and all the other ones were harvested, but they feel very, very spaced out.
You're talking about the actual mining nodes in the world?
Yeah, and the herbalism nodes, and because like once you get the I don't know if you once you get a lumber mill in your garrison, then there's little trees around the world that are basically like an herbalism or a mining node, except instead it gives you lumber, which you can turn into garrison resources.
Correct, yeah.
And all of these nodes, they just feel so sparse.
Well, the Alliance equivalent to the Horde's Frostfire Ridge is Shadow Moon Valley. And when I first got my lumber mill quest, the quest giver explicitly states, there aren't many trees in Frostfire Ridge. It's pretty barren, it's tons of snow and ice and mountains. So I'm wondering if they didn't balance it out and didn't give you very many trees in Shadow Moon Valley just to kind of give you an even, fair experience. And you'll find more trees in Talador and Nagran.
Yeah, don't want to give it. Don't just because there's lots of trees around doesn't mean they're useful.
Exactly.
Well, I would say it's been my experience that there are more trees in Talador than there were in Shadow Moon Valley. Like, at least I would say it feels like about twice as much. But the thing is, even in Shadow Moon, there were plenty of trees. Like right now, I'm basically drowning in lumber. I have more lumber than I can actually complete work orders with because of the time gating on work orders. So I don't feel it's that bad. And as for mining and herbalism nodes, I think Blizzard might have reduced how easy to find and how common they are in the world to make up for the mining and herb garden that you have in your garrison. Because that way everything balances out. Because if you give people too much or too many herbs, then that very quickly becomes worthless. So there's a certain point where Blizzard has to say, we're giving more of this to the players for free, so we have to cut down somewhere else.
I
agree with you there.
100% agree. And like it was something I didn't notice until I actually got I don't have the herb garden yet. You get the excavation mining shaft at like level 92, but you don't get your herb garden until level 96 or until you've set up your outpost in Talador, which since I am completing zones, I am level 93 and just now hit Gorgrond. So I'll hit 96 before I get the Talador outpost. So I won't get the herbs, which makes it feel to me like there aren't any herbs because I'm an herbalist. But I do have the mining shaft, and I'm not a miner, but I'm swimming in mining nodes and resources and all that kind of different stuff. So, I mean, I definitely can see where that would come from. And after a certain point, especially once I'm able to harvest the medium and large timber nodes, I bet I will be swimming in lumber as well.
Yeah, I think with the timing that it takes for the work orders to complete and the quantity of work orders you're allowed to have active at once with level 3 buildings, it lets you kind of not worry about your main character for a couple days. You don't have to log in every day, and I think that's kind of the quality of life, smoothing it out, slowing it down. You can't just grind your way to 700 blacksmithing. You have to kind of just pace it out. And there's no reason to get to 700 as fast as possible. It seems like they give you access to the best gear on day one, and it just takes time to accumulate the resources.
Almost. I mean, if on day one you hit a rank 3 garrison, but right now I have the alchemy lab and the scribes chambers or whatever it's called, because I want to make the Dark Moon cards, and I can't even make those until I get a level 2 scribes quarters. So I mean, that's just part of me taking a little bit slower and doing the quests and seeing the story. And of note, I have read every single quest so far, which I've never done before. And I'm not doing it necessarily by choice. I'm doing it out of wanting to know.
Yeah, I'm also doing the same thing, kind of checking myself and making sure I read through it. I mean, I don't know why, because typically I'm not that kind of person, but this with the world they've created with Draenor, it seems like it's almost worth digging into, whereas before, it might have just been an afterthought.
Yeah, it's definitely completely fantastic. What were you about to say, Florian?
That's something that I've definitely focused on this time with story. I feel like I'm a lot more drawn in and a lot more immersed. I feel less like I'm just sitting in my desk playing an MMO and more like I'm actually in the world doing something, which is something that in World of Warcraft has always been a weakness, has been immersion. Because of the nature of MMOs, it's very hard to immerse the player. And I think they've done a pretty good job with it this time, and it's resulted in the same sort of thing. Like, I normally do not read that much quest text. Now I've been reading every single thing, and in fact, I've been doing more quests than I would normally do. Normally, I would just do the quests in a zone that I need to do to outlevel that zone and immediately go on to the next zone. In this case, I've been doing every single quest in every single zone. Maybe not all the secondary objectives, but it's more motivating to do the quests when you've got an actual storyline and actual character progression going on there.
Definitely. And a couple small things I wanted to touch on that I've just really recognized in the expansion, that just some small quality of life things, or maybe just things that I found interesting, is that the way that they've structured the world, it's much easier to run around. Like, if you run up on a table, your character will just walk on top of the table most of the time. It's much more intuitive on the things that your character can and can't walk on and up and over and stuff. So instead of having to jump over that, foot-tall fence, your character will now just walk over it, which is something that I just noticed passively as I was, absent-mindedly running around my garrison. I was able to, run over the backs of chairs and jump, and without jumping, run up onto the railing and stuff. So and I even felt that way running around in the world. I mean, I definitely would feel sometimes that a small hill was placed there just to be in my way in old expansions. And now I can climb up it much more smoothly without having to treat it like a jumping exploit. Now it's just, no, you can just run up it. It's a little steep, so you might not be able to, but you are. And that's definitely something that I felt it definitely took away from the feeling like I was being directed to where they wanted me to go. I had this free world that I was able to just climb and run around and stuff very, very freely.
Yeah, another thing, touching on the movement thing around the world, is that I'm used to the old classic WoW where you have, if you want to go from the lower level of a mob camp to a higher level of a mob camp, there's a dirt hill. But now there's boxes with, wood angled up on them and small boxes at the bottom, and it's kind of like you're climbing on the terrain. It still functions like a dirt ramp, but it looks like it meshes into the world a lot better and it's a lot more believable and immersive.
Yeah, it's just really great. Just the terrain design, the world design on a physical aspect, I feel they've really, really increased on and just made it much more smooth, and it gives it a lot of immersion to make it feel more realistic. This isn't some weird thing that my character can't climb over because it's a game. My character is very easily able to climb over it, and the things that I can't would require actual effort to get over, such as jumping.
Mm-hmm. And we got to talk about the differences in the quest log and the quest map, because going through and having quests start automatically, quest objectives change automatically. I'll have a 0 of 1, explore the cavern. You get to the cavern, it fills up 1 of 1, cavern explored. Then it changes. Now you got to kill the big monster that's in there. It doesn't spoil it. I don't know what to expect. It's more dynamic. It flows with you, like your quest log's exploring as you're exploring too, and that's a huge quality of life change. It just changes the entire game, I feel.
No, it's definitely massive. It definitely makes it feel like your character has more of a mind. It doesn't need to go back and be told what to do next. Your character has an idea. Once you get to the mine, go inside.
Yep, exactly.
But we're going to move on and talk about something that was a bit surprising, that may not have hit quite as many places as we thought, but it was definitely quite a large uprising. over the whole trouble of the queues and the lag and the bugs and all of this, there was a very large confuckle on Reddit. Reddit is a place that I hope most of you are aware of. It's basically a giant forum. It's a bunch of different threads and stuff. It's just organized a little bit differently to quite not look like the Warcraft forums. That's the best way I can find to describe it. It's just a very smoothed out, glorified forum. And they have subreddits, which are basically sub-forums, so topics, and there's, of course, Warcraft ones, and the main one that is the bulk Warcraft one is our WoW. And there are people called moderators that moderate it, they can delete posts, ban users, etc. And they had such a huge influx of just crap posts. They were getting like 100 posts every 10 minutes of people posting pictures of their long queues, of these terrible jokes and just complaints and all this kind of different stuff, to the point that the mods quit. All of them, including the one that owned the subreddit. They posted a big sticky post that said, you know what, we're done. We've been trying for like 36 hours to keep you guys under control. Forget it. Post whatever you want. We don't care. And then they just all left and went to sleep. And this was surprising and unexpected, especially because the WoW subreddit gets like over 1 million hits a day. So it's not like, some small little forum dedicated to some thing that not many people know about or care about or has a small following. It's a large group. I mean, Blizzard has employees that are dedicated to keeping an eye on Reddit. They have a couple employees that they watch Reddit. They're involved with Reddit. They'll talk to Reddit. They'll help Reddit. They'll explain things to people on it. And this was a surprising thing. Now, I know both of you are on it on occasion, but how much do both of you use Reddit?
Well, I use it every day. I'm definitely a Redditor, and I frequent the WoW subreddit. First noticed a problem. Well, I did notice their big post, their announcement saying you can post whatever you want. I felt like that was a little unexpected, but I don't blame them. And then last night I wasn't able to load the subreddit at all on my mobile device. Came back and I saw that you guys were talking about it. And sure enough, yeah, the subreddit's been made private. I can't imagine what the story is behind that, but it seems like it was just too much. People just got up in arms and couldn't stop expressing their discontent with the situation.
Well, if you aren't aware, the subreddit's back up.
All right, fantastic.
Yeah, it is back up. It's back online. It is running again. Reddit, Florian, how often are you on Reddit?
Pretty much on a daily basis. However, this mess with the WoW subreddit actually went a little further than what was stated already by you. I've dug into it a little bit because I kind of wanted to know what was going on. And apparently the owner of the subreddit just decided to fire all the mods and made it private. He ostensibly did this because he is very upset about the Draenor launch. I don't know why he thinks this is going to fix it, but a Blizzard community rep pleaded with him on Twitter to reopen it, and so far as I can tell, he hasn't done it because I just went to Reddit and it's still private. We'll see what happens going forward, but I think this is one of the flaws with Reddit, where just whoever creates a subreddit is automatically just master and commander of that subreddit for all time. So just any random guy can be the first to make a subreddit for something popular, and then stuff like this happens. They can shut down an entire community on a whim, which is it's a Reddit problem, but it's something that right now is hurting the our WoW community.
Is it still down? I wasn't aware.
Yeah, I've just checked it, and it's still private. I mean, the subreddit is active, but it's private, and I'm not allowed in. As a noble peasant as I am.
So what does that mean? You have to get an invite to go inside? I don't know how private Reddit servers work.
I didn't know private Reddit servers existed until this time.
Mm-hmm. Indeed they do. There is a message, though, on the page, and it says it's been shut down due to doxing.
Do you say dox or DDoS, like DDoS?
Dox. D-O-X-X-I-N-G. That's just what it says. I'm not sure.
I've never heard of that before.
The doxing is a thing that 4chan started it, like everything. And it's basically taking someone you don't like online and trying to get into their information, find out their real name, address, phone number, etc., and publish all that stuff online for anyone to see.
Oh, that's
yes.
rude. That's evil. Okay, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I didn't know that's what it was called, but I definitely heard of the instances where ex-boyfriends or whatever would post their girlfriends' phone numbers online to the point that they had to like shut down their phones and change their phone numbers and their emails and all kinds of stuff and delete their Facebook because just horrible people doing horrible things. That's unfortunate, though, but luckily Reddit is something that can be transferred around. I mean, even if our WoW at this point dies and stays dead because of the dude who owns it, there is always Warcraft. As there's a subreddit called Warcraft. They can do our World of Warcraft. Both of these exist. They just don't really have a very large following because our Warcraft used to be a lore forum, and now they moved that subreddit to a subreddit literally called Warcraft Lore. So there are options. It's just really surprising that this is what it came to. And he originally did say that he was doing it as part of like a protest, which it's kind of like if you like, it's like that. We have one like once a year where people like, we protest the price on gasoline. So on, April 11th, nobody buy any gasoline. If you need to buy gasoline, buy it, 3 days before or whatever. But if nobody buys gasoline for one day, it does show up. They do notice the lack of 1 day of purchase in gasoline as a whole. It does send out a little bit of a message. And I think that's what his intent was with this, of that if this is the quality of WoW, the WoW subreddit is just going to shut down. But it doesn't work that way. The WoW Reddit doesn't fuel Blizzard. I mean, it's a community, it's a collective, but Blizzard doesn't make money off of the WoW subreddit.
Well, even so, you have to consider the fact that if you use it as an analogy, like your 1 day where no one buys gas thing, he could have called for that, but the thing is, he's forcibly causing an entire community to not post on the WoW Reddit by shutting down the WoW Reddit. He didn't say, if you guys are against this, just post or don't post. He just turned the entire thing off, which when you have power over an entire community, that's just not something you can do. It's not really acceptable, if that makes any sense.
No, and I think what it might come to is that because our World of Warcraft wasn't active, it was an inactive subreddit, so you couldn't post on it or do anything like that. And in light of this, somebody actually got a hold of the people that run Reddit and asked them if they could have the subreddit, and it was approved. So our World of Warcraft is back online as an active subreddit, but what this means for the RWoW community is something that we don't know as of right now. I mean, obviously, if everyone wants to switch over and migrate over to our World of Warcraft, then they possibly can. But there's a lot of people that won't know about it, won't know what happened, won't understand, or anything like that. And that's unfortunate, but it's really hard to say what's going to happen from here with the largest community forum that WoW has.
Well, it's also one of the largest Reddits that Reddit has. So I'm pretty sure that the Reddit team is going to have to step in at some point and do something about it. I think the best thing for them to do right now would be to hand it over to someone else, because the WoW Reddit had other mods, and these other mods were against shutting the whole thing down, and apparently the guy in charge just said, no, I'm going to do it anyway. So I think handing it over to someone else would probably be the best move, and that's what they'd have to consider at this point.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, if you leave it down, I mean, it doesn't fix anything, and it just leaves this guy... He had a power trip, and now he's doesn't know what to do about it, and I think now he's gonna... No matter what, now he's the bad guy. So he's just gonna leave it down, because if he puts it back up, he's going to get ridiculous amounts of fire just lit under him for being the way that he's been.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. This is going to be a stroke of ill fortune for our WoW, I think, forever. I think people are going to move over to World of Warcraft. I think that's what the overall Reddit moderators want to see happen, because that means they don't have to step in and do anything. If the community changes places, goes to our World of Warcraft instead, then it kind of solves the problem for them. Already the top 2 posts on our World of Warcraft are, hey, let's move here. There's a sticky about the status of our WoW that kind of incorporates what Florian told us. And also, our WoW has made it to the top post in subreddit drama. So
joyous.
You know what that means. Reddit team, I think the general Reddit management team is going to have to consider this to be a episode in the flaws that are, kind of plaguing the system in general. It is kind of something that needs to be looked at. The sole owner of the subreddits, it's like going on YouTube and, making all of the new popular bands with Vivo after it as an account before Vivo gets it, and then trying to sell it to Vivo afterwards. It doesn't really make sense. You know what I'm talking about?
No, I definitely know. I mean, and that happened. Stuff like that happened 20 years ago when the internet itself was starting to be born. And I remember Michael Jackson bought michaeljackson.com for like $450,000 or something ridiculous because a couple of people saw the opportunity and just went, I own this domain, I own this one, I own this one. Anything that could possibly be important to anybody ever. I just need to pay the $1 or whatever it is to own the domain. And then if they want to pay me $50,000, sweet. And so that, I mean, and that thing still happens now, although there are ways around it. But the other issue with this, with the Reddit, as you're talking about, because, now someone has to either be given the RWow or they just have to leave it dead or, who knows what's going to happen with it. But something else to touch on is that the owner of RWow, his name is... It's either... one of those. Anyway, and he actually is a moderator on a couple of other very important subreddits, so they're probably going to have to look at him as a whole on what he is allowed to do, because they can't have people like that with access to the things that he had access to. He was always a really cool guy and was very calm and, had snarky comments towards people that were snarky towards him. Perfectly fine. I mean, Blizzard does this, oh, you're being rude to me, well, you're stupid too. But they can't have people that'll just shut things down because they're not happy.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we'll see what happens. Time will tell. At least there is another place to go if there are people who are out there who are subscribers to RWow that haven't been able to get on RWow and want to do their Reddit WoW discussions. It's our World of Warcraft right now, it seems like.
The three of us?
Yeah.
Because I'm on Reddit all the time. I mean, during my 15-minute break at work, during lunch, I'll pop onto Reddit, see what's going on, see if there's anything new. Look at the cool pictures that people post. Reddit's just a fun place to be. Even when it's being toxic, it's still a very interesting place. So, I mean, I will be moving to our World of Warcraft, and if our WoW comes back, I will probably just stay on both. But as of right now, I have to move. It's really unfortunate that it comes to things like this and that there are people like this, and as you said, it's a problem that Reddit will have to address. I don't know if there's an answer to it, though, because I think that's really part of the way that Reddit's code is, unless Reddit itself wants to start trying to hire people, I guess, to operate the larger ones as part of their business.
It would be a good business move. I mean, that's up to them. It's just kind of funny how this is all collateral damage from Blizzard server difficulties, it seems like, and the kind of shaky launch.
Which is what we're going to move into right now with the closer look. So for those of you that don't know, this is a closer look. It's a little section that we decided to include on which we are going to take an extra little peek, a little in-depth conversation, an in-depth examination of something within the entire encompassment of World of Warcraft or Blizzard as a company. Now, this isn't merely just a news discussion like we just left. This could be anything from looking at the changes to PvP to looking at a feature and actually giving it a little bit more discussion than just, hey, this is cool, this is what it does, moving on. This could even be involved with, like, how does a druid beat a death knight in arenas? Or it could go, it's just for us to get a little bit more in-depth on a topic that might not be a headline or something that somebody just goes, hey, for a closer look, could you really take a closer look at this? I don't understand it. Or this would be really neat to talk about. And today, during a closer look, we're going to be looking at the technical difficulties of every WoW expansion. This one had some of the largest ones in history, probably the largest. And a lot of people just see their queue times. And we want to go over and really discuss in depth everything that actually goes into a Warcraft expansion on launch day and what everything means. And also, if you're not aware, why you're experiencing the lag, the queues, and everything along this. We'll just go ahead and start with opinions on the launch itself. So, Evan, what is your opinion on the launch experience? Not the quest or the story or anything, the actual technical side of it. What is your opinion on it?
Well, I started optimistic. I was tenacious like Florian. And then it got a little bit frustrating throughout most of Thursday afternoon and evening, launch day proper. Friday was a little better. And then by Saturday and Sunday, the weekend proper, I think it was really actually smoothed out and more or less entirely remedied. Right now, I knew I could expect to log on. I could expect not to have a very long queue on my low population realm, and I could expect not to have garrison crashes or server, hiccups. So I think 4 days after launch, having things be more or less good is really successful.
And a lot of people would argue that it should have been successful from the very first moment it launched. But Florian, where are you standing on this? What is your outlook on everything that's happened so far?
This has been a complete and total mess so far. I play on a high pop server. I'm still playing on a high pop server. I have alts on low pop servers, but I refuse to go to them because I'm going to my main, whether anyone else likes it or not. And the weekend has been nothing but queues, and more queues. And part of that, according to Blizzard, is that way more people are coming back than they anticipated. I saw on the World of Warcraft forums that I don't know if this is an official number, and I don't know where they got it from, but apparently there are over 1 million more subscribers coming in, and that was a lot more than Blizzard had anticipated. So it's really just a server population issue. Right now in Wormist Accord, we still have queues of over 2,000, so it's still a several-hour wait, but that's more of an issue of server population because we have a small number of servers that have massive populations, and then WoW has just tons and tons of servers that are empty wastelands. When I first started playing WoW, I played on the Forgotten Coast, which was empty when I got into it, and as far as I know, it's still pretty empty now. So it's really more of an issue of balancing out population between realms. It's just a few specific high pop realms that got hit very hard. At least that's what I understand. As for the lower pop realms that had queue issues, I'm not really sure why that happened. I think it was probably a result of the garrison tech, which should have been tested more, which should have been more heavily stress tested before the beta launched. But for some reason, Blizzard just kept the beta small. I'm not sure why they did that.
For those of you that don't know, they had tons of problems with the launch. People were experiencing 4 to 10 hour queue times, depending on their server. There were server crashes. And this isn't even technical, like there were bugs in the game. This is purely just the equipment itself trying to get everyone into the game. And a lot of people are calling for refunds, calling that this is the worst launch it's ever been, that it's a complete failure as a launch as far as expansions go. Because even at the peak of Warcraft subscription numbers, when Wrath of the Lich King launched, and Cataclysm, people weren't seeing queues on the maximum pop servers for more than an hour. And on medium servers, they're seeing queues of 3 to 4 hours. I personally play on Proudmoore, which is, I believe, somewhere around the 10th most populated server. And I've had a 4-hour queue about every day, and it sounds like the guys are having something similar. Now, as Florian already stated, this goes into having more people on a server that want into the server than the server is currently loaded for. So I don't know, and I wasn't able to find the exact number of people that servers are built for, but we'll say a server is allowed to have 50,000 people connected to it, maximum, before it says it's full. So once that number hits 50,000, anyone else who wants in goes into a queue. And it's not like you just get in after a certain amount of time. That queue goes down as people log out. So when someone logs out, and after their grace period is passed, because Blizzard gives you a grace period where if you get DC'd, you have like 5 minutes, 15 minutes to reconnect, and you don't have to worry about the queue because you were already in and something happened that disconnected you. So once people's grace period falls off, then their slots open. This allows for more people to go in. So that's why a lot of times the estimated time was wonky. It would be like, oh, I'll get in 2 hours. 5 hours later, you're still not in yet. Well, nobody's logging out. And this led to a ridiculous uprising that even led to what we already talked about with the WoW Reddit shutdown. It was messy.
There's nothing the player can do, really. I mean, it's just like Florian said, he refuses to play on anything except his main. You know, it's like he is very intentful about getting on that one character, and I think a lot of people feel the same way. I mean, we have a personal connection to our favorite characters. A lot of us spent weeks deciding which character we were going to play on, you know? And then a lot of less fortunate people have all of their level 90 characters on one server, you know? And so I don't know if this is a big ploy to get people to pay for level 90 boosts on alts on low population servers. That'd be really funny, right? Conspiracy.
Well, that would be sad because Blizzard's not hurting for money. We know that. So they don't need to do things like that to make money. And a couple people called them out on lying about the stuff that they were posting, and they're like, what do we have to gain by lying? They're like,
right.
Lying to you about increasing server population when it would do us no good if you're still not getting in. It's like, you're still going to be upset, so we have no reason to lie.
And, you know, I think this is going to start breaking and wearing down this separate realm idea entirely. A lot of, I'm not going to say a lot. I know of one example of a new MMORPG that has a giant world server, one giant world server. And it phases people in, kind of like Blizzard had a lot of phasing, just depending on server load. So can you imagine having all the characters in your account available on one quote-unquote realm, and then when one server fills up, they start logging people into a separate one, and they keep party members together, and they keep guilds together as much as they can. But it's just like phasing the entire world, mashing all the realms together, and then kind of spreading out the load over all their servers, rather than having some servers with no queues, some servers with 10-hour queues.
I think Go ahead.
Another solution to this problem that some MMOs use is they'll have overflow servers, which is if your main server is full and you can't get onto it, instead what the game will do is just put you on one of their overflow servers specifically designed for overflow. And you will not be told you're on an overflow server. You will not realize you're on an overflow server. If somebody groups with you from your main server, they'll just get pulled into the overflow server. And then whenever the queues are down, it just automatically phases you into your main server without you ever knowing you were on another server. And this is technology, I know Guild Wars 2 uses it. I think Old Republic uses it. And it's a pretty well-known and proven technology, and I'm honestly surprised Blizzard hasn't adopted it yet at this point.
The reason that I think they haven't is because they establish categories with their servers. I played Guild Wars 2 very minimally. But Blizzard has PvP servers, PvE servers, RP servers, RP PvP servers. So
exactly. There's only 4 types, though. I mean, they don't have legacy servers. They don't have private servers. I mean, there's only 4 types. I think it's not too much of a stretch to iterate this idea that we have 4 times.
No, but the idea of an overflow server, while I could see its use, with the sheer amount of overflow that they had at launch, I don't think it would have helped. Because we'll say that Blizzard was expecting 5 million people. Like Florian already said that they had more people than they expected. But let's say they had 5 million people that they were expecting. They said that they had set their capacity of what their equipment and everything could handle to be about twice that? No, it wasn't quite that much. Let's say 5 million was what they were expecting, so they set capacity for 7 million. And then they actually got 10 million. And it was just something that they weren't prepared for. I mean, for instance, we'll use what we're doing right now as an example. Podcast. You're using a podcast, you have to host it somewhere. So wherever you downloaded this from, whether you downloaded it from iTunes or wherever you got it, they're not the ones who host it. They just get a feed for it. You actually have to host it with a company that is used for hosting. There are free ones, there are paid ones. The free ones have a limit on how much they can be used. So let's say this podcast ends up being 100 megabytes. And I go to a free one and they say, well, this is free, but you have a gigabyte of bandwidth that you're allowed to use. So that means I would only be allowed for someone to download this podcast 10 times. Now, let's say, for instance, it was 100 times that I was allowed. I was expecting 50 people to download this, so I set my host to be able to download 100 times. So I was like, yeah, I got plenty of free room in case, it's surprising and a lot of word of mouth goes around and they download a whole bunch of them. But then 1,000 people download it, and then there's 900 people in queue going, hello, why can't I download this?
Right.
And that's what happened to Blizzard. They went, this is way more than we expected. We weren't ready for it. And that's why they even had scheduled maintenance and upgraded all of their hardware. They went, our hardware's not good enough. Turn it off, put new stuff in as soon as it gets here, and hope that helps. And it did help. But there's still issues arousing within all of this. And people have this expectation that Blizzard has all this money and that they have this big giant server, and so Blizzard should always be able to handle everything forever. And why didn't Blizzard just, they had 14 million people at one time, why didn't they just set the servers to hold 20 million so that this wouldn't happen? Well, Blizzard's a company. People don't realize that the equipment to do that would cost so much. And then what happens in a month when half of those people, well, not half, but we'll say, 15, 20% of those people bought a month, played a month, and then are like, Warcraft is still kind of the same. I don't want to play it, so I'm done.
Right, exactly.
Now they have this huge, giant ability, and it's completely going to waste.
Yep, is they have to control damage. They have to keep queues long right now so that people who are on the fence decide not to stay. Blizzard doesn't need them anyway. I like that outlook. It's cold and salty and realistic.
And it's not that Blizzard doesn't want them to stay, but in order to get everybody right now that wants to play, they would lose lots of money.
It's true. And then people wouldn't stay anyway. It's just the nature of the beast. With games like this, people started playing 10 years ago. I mean, a lot of people, I don't know anybody in particular who came back after a long break just for Warlords, but I'm sure they're out there, and half of those, quarter of those, 25, 15%, like you said, might just not be into it. And that's fine. I buy plenty of games I don't end up playing very much.
And that's something that the Blizzard realizes and is, it just happens. People come and go, especially with Warcraft as a whole. There are always tons of people that are coming and going when it comes to Warcraft. So while this has been really rough, you got to realize that fixing it would just create a different problem. People didn't like that they were merging servers because servers were dead. They're like, and that's what brought on the WoW is dying thing, because Warcraft was merging servers and stuff like that. I mean, a server that died that I used to play on was Eridar. It used to be a really big full server, and now it was a ghost land. Like, there wasn't anybody on that thing. And it got merged with like 4 or 5 other servers. And I don't know the specifics of the equipment, because some people are calling that merging servers led to this problem, because now all of those servers are on the same disk, on the same blade, which I don't think that's true at all. I think they just added a connection between them, but I don't know. But would you have preferred they stay dead? I mean, the reason those were dead is because Warcraft had 13 million people, and then they went down to, 7. So now they had this vacancy of 6 million, which I would love to see it come back, but it's a technical standpoint of what needs and doesn't need to be done.
There are multiple solutions I guess they probably could have considered. You're right, and we're seeing it right now where we have people coming back, and it's impossible to predict what server they're going to come back to, so we're going to have unpredictably populated servers. And then when you have 13 million people, it goes down to 7. Some servers are going to see an 80% loss. Some servers are going to see a 10% loss. It's just going to be kind of random. And when you're on one of those servers, it's completely dead. A lot of people talked about that over the years, saying this is not a good experience. Some people like it. Some people just really don't. I think most of the people really don't. And what you can do is either merge it to another server or just move all the characters, force them to leave, shut the server down. And I think the server merges are a little bit messy. They kind of, they add on that little server tag in the chat and in the world to your character name and everything. I think it makes it a little bit cluttered. I don't know who I can trade with. I don't know if I would prefer just getting them off the server, closing the server down, repurposing that hardware, and just putting them physically on a different server permanently.
Well, and then you also run into those dead servers. People will transfer off of those servers onto servers that are already packed. So, I mean, like, people on dead servers are like, well, I want whatever is not dead. And then they see servers like Illidan and Storm Rage, and they're like, oh, man, there's people there. I'm going to go there. But
Yeah,
that
it's
server...
Well,
Go ahead,
it's a
Florian.
problem that WoW has always had where they have way more servers than they actually need. I have never seen a situation in all the years that I have played the game where there was an appropriate number of servers to where every server would have, on average, a medium to high population. It never happened. There's always at least half of the servers sitting at low population and being deserts. So this is really a problem that Blizzard brought on themselves. I don't know if they added so many servers because they expected the game to continue its explosive growth that happened through Cataclysm, but this is really a problem that could have been avoided to begin with by just not making a monstrous number of servers.
It's one of those, you want to have it and not need it, then need it and not have it.
True. That's good because to say you can say that about a lot of different things, but in this case, I think what they need and what they have are so completely disparate that it would just not make any business sense whatsoever to get enough hardware to have, very low or zero queues for everybody trying to log in this weekend. And like you said, 2 weeks from now, more than a little bit of that stuff is going to be obsolete.
Well, and like with the server merges and with what you were talking about with like the overflow servers, I'm guessing this comes down to connections between the servers because they have to plan, the server has to go down, the servers has to come back up, and then they're merged. So I'm guessing it has something to do with actually connecting them via cables and stuff that I don't understand, that I'm not an IT guy, I don't do that. I'm assuming it has something to do with that. So, while they would love to be able to overflow Storm Rage into... I don't even know a different server off the top of my head that is low population. Some low pop server. I'm sure they would love to be able to just go, oh, okay, well, you're over there now. Thank God. We'll just take some of the stress off of that blade. That they literally might not have the technology to do that readily. I mean, you can be pulled to other servers, but I don't feel though that's one person's data being moved. Not necessarily an entire group of people, so I feel as though that might be different. It's a one-on-one instance rather than a hunk. And then also if they do that, well, there are technically people on that server. You're not allowed to trade with them, because that's going to get frustrating, because I'll tell you right now, I already hate cross-realm zones.
Well, that's a problem that you run into when you've got really old server infrastructure. The fact is, while Blizzard does constantly upgrade their hardware, in order to keep things good enough that everyone can play. The fact is that this is a really old game. It's running on a really old engine with a really old network code, and a lot of server infrastructure was probably set up and designed back in 2003 or something like that.
Probably
and
older.
They've probably got a basic infrastructure right now that they can't redesign without having to basically tear everything apart and redesign it from the ground up. It's kind of like the main bag slot in World of Warcraft. They can't give you more than 16 slots because it's hard-coded into the game engine, and they would have to redesign the entire thing from the ground up. And I'm pretty sure they have similar problems with the servers, where there's a lot of things they would like to do, but that would require massive investment, a complete redesign of the server system, and probably a lot of downtime for players.
Well, I think the expansion was pretty successful, so they should have a little bit more money to work on these hardware problems. And I think this is such a release that they're going to be really paying attention to those demands for the next expansion, especially if they're going to be moving towards a smaller expansion gap.
What I know is that the expansion itself, in my opinion, is fantastic. So Blizzard has been trying very hard to stay communicating with people, let you know what they're doing, what's happening, why it's happening, what they're going to try and do to fix it, what they can do to fix it, what they can't do. And they have mentioned talking about these servers that are well over what is a respectable population, like Stormrage, Illidan, Tichondrius, things like that. Proudmoore, the one I'm on, is technically one of them. About possibly looking at free transfers to lower population servers. Some people say, well, it's way too late for that. Well, look at that as a precaution towards the future. It's something that Blizzard wasn't expecting, and honestly, it could have been so much worse. The entire game as a whole could have just went down for a week. We've seen this happen before, not with Blizzard itself, but with other games. I have seen games go up, and then the game goes down, and no one knows what happens because the company goes silent, and then a week and a half later, they have apparently fixed it, and it goes back in. So we'll just have to just shut up and be patient. Like, I understand that you pay to play the game, but also understand that Blizzard does care. They are one of the few companies that is very happy to talk to their people, listen to their people. Blizzard is actually one of the very few people that'll listen to you. They understand that you're upset. They understand why it's frustrating. Because guess what? They all play the game too. It's not like they're sitting there in their office going, well, screw them. I can play the game because I got, the Blizzard company server. I don't know.
Those fat cats with their monocles sitting there in Irvine, California, they make me sick.
No, they are up at, 2 o'clock in the morning, still at work going, I want it to be fixed because at this point I want to go home and go to sleep. Bashiok was on Twitter at like 1 a.m. going, we're still working on it. We're still here. We're still working on it. I'm sorry. So understand that they care, they're trying, and just give them a little bit of a break. And we're going to try and just move away from that a little bit, and we're going to transition now into the mailbag. Alright, you can send your questions to thecastbar@gmail.com. The Castbar itself does have a Twitter, which is at Castbar Podcast, or you can call and leave us a voicemail that we can hopefully play on the show at 508-738-2278. Obviously, since this was our first show, I could have either asked for some questions from a couple of close guys, but I thought a couple of other questions of my own would be a little bit better to post today. The first one is, who are we? You don't know who we are. I appreciate you listening to us, but you might question, well, someone just started a podcast. I don't know who these guys are. Why should I listen to them? Why do I care? So that's what we're going to step on right now. My name is Michael. I live in Alaska. I work an office job. I play Blizzard games and almost nothing but. I used to play lots of other things, and now I just really love Blizzard. And I just really enjoy the game as a whole. Warcraft is definitely one of my favorite games of all time, aside from maybe a couple really old ones that, are just so outdated that I'm holding on to for nostalgia reasons, but would be pooped on in today's world. This is just something that I love, and that's why I'm here. What about you, Evan? What can you tell people about you?
Well, I'm a pretty enthusiastic gamer. I play basically World of Warcraft and League of Legends. Not very much else apart from that. I really like the online games. I like being social. And after Heroes of the Storm comes out and I get to try that, I might be a Blizzard guy like you. We'll see how that goes. But for now, I really like both of those and spend a good amount of time playing that. I live near the Washington, D.C. area. I'm 26, just regular old working guy, honestly. Play games when I can, try to structure my life so that I can enjoy them to the utmost. Really like an expansion this time. I've played every single WoW expansion. I was in the WoW open beta back in 2004, before they released in that November. And I've been on and off since. I think a lot of people who have played since Classic have had their breaks. And life gets busy. You can't just play 10 years, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Some people, a small handful, probably have, but I've been a little bit more casual. I've done some intense raiding, some intense PvP, but, I think I fly right around the middle as far as, skill and dedication go in this game.
So, quick question. Me, personally, I started playing in the Burning Crusade. You're talking about breaks. How many have you taken and when?
Well, I played Classic basically start to finish, I feel. Burning Crusade, probably start to finish. I think I took my first big significant break a couple weeks after Wrath of the Lich King released. Got my Shaman to level 80, and then took a break, came in at the end of the Wrath, played through the beginning of Cataclysm, took another break after the first raid tier, and came back midway through Mist of Pandaria. Take a third break, halfway through Mist of Pandaria, came back with Siege of Orgrimmar, in anticipation of Warlords, and I've been playing since.
My first break was my first and only break was during Cataclysm. I personally love the difficulty and everything that was established in Cataclysm. I did not enjoy when they changed it, although I understand why. I quit right before Firelands was launched, and I did not come back until friends essentially almost made me, right as 5.4 launched. So my break was pretty significant. I was gone for a couple of years, just not playing the game. It was both technical problems, and then I also had a couple of drama problems with a couple of people in the game that I just went, you know what, I don't want to be here anymore, and I quit.
Yeah, this is part of the territory when you're playing an online game. But for me, nobody ever bullied me back in. I just have an itch that seats itself deep inside the psyche and has to be scratched every once in a while, so I can never leave for too long. It was like that way with Ultima Online, the very first MMO I ever played. I can't go more than a year or two before I have to download a free server and play that game again, even though it was made in 1997, you know.
My friends actually went, you're coming back, here's the Scroll of Resurrection, here's the expansion, and here's a month of game time. If you don't come back, you're wasting my money. And I went, well, that's not really fair. Fine, I'll play. And then got me to play again, and now I'm here. We actually have 3 people on this podcast, and the other one, who's been quietly waiting very patiently, Florian. Welcome.
Okay, so I am Florian. I've been playing World of Warcraft for a very long time, since the tail end of vanilla. I want to say sometime in 2006, but I'm not sure. I have played in every expansion, although I like to take 3 to 6 month breaks every now and then, usually at the end of the expansion when nothing is happening. I've played many other MMOs. I played Old Republic, Final Fantasy XIV. I suffered through RuneScape at a very dark time in my life. When I'm not playing Blizzard games, I like to army. That is what I do for a living, and I live wherever they tell me to live. That's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Awesome. And then the other question that I went ahead and posted onto our mailbag tonight was, why would you start a podcast? Now, this is, a lot of people will just say, well, because I want to, because it's for fun. Now, a World of Warcraft podcast is, to the people that would be listening to this, a little bit different than just starting a podcast. I mean, because this is a podcast genre that lives in the world of podcasts like Convert to Raid and The Instance. I listen to both of them. I love them both. And they are very big contenders. And there have probably been thousands of World of Warcraft podcasts that have come and gone. And I love podcasts due to a couple of things otherwise that I was going to start in other places that didn't end up happening. I stuck a big finger in the air and said I'll do it by myself, in which I seeked out help and found the 2 gentlemen that you hear talking alongside me. And this is the first episode, and I'm hoping that we continue on. From what I read, if you can get 10 consistent episodes is about the average. So if we pump an episode out every week is what we're going to be shooting for the next 10 weeks. Then after that, they say that you should be in the rhythm enough that it just happens. And I did a lot of research and did a lot of reading, and I'm trying to get the formula down for what makes an enjoyable podcast while trying to give our podcast a little bit of a more unique flavor to it. Because while you do want to look to kings towards people who are successful for inspiration, just copying them isn't always enough. So I don't want to make discount Instance, discount Convert to Raid.
Convert to Raid Light.
Oh, wow. That makes it sound even worse. No,
it'll be all right. I think it's just a matter of bringing in your own personality and seeing who bites. I think all we can do is work on and try to make an enjoyable conversation for people to kind of participate in and then to listen to if they want to kill some time at work or on the road,
Definitely. And like me personally, I listen to a lot of them. So having more for me was fantastic. But I've also found a lot of bad ones. So I'm hoping that I can make with you guys a good one that will, just fall into people's regular rotation. And I wanted to bring something to the community that had something else. So, such as a closer look a lot of podcasts will look at headlines, look at big news, but they don't ever get down really to a nitty-gritty. And even if you don't enjoy it, that's fine. Let me know. Give me feedback. Give Evan feedback. Tell Florian that this part sucks and that he should tell me that we should take it out and never speak of it again. Suggest to us new sections, something else you'd like to see. The other thing that we are actually including right after this segment is a review segment. So every week we'll be reviewing something. We'll probably start out with Nothing But Dungeons just to get our feet on the floor to make sure we know what we're talking about. But we could review anything in the game.
We are the Nascent podcast. We are putty in the hands of our listeners at this point.
Yeah, definitely. It's
Sculpt us as you will,
We give you a base. If we get enough feedback that says, hey, you should do this instead, we'll try to do that instead. Just let us know what's good and what's bad. And that's what's important so that we can sculpt it into something that is both pleasing to us to perform and to people to listen to. And that's what we're shooting for. And also, I want to include you guys, the people that are listening right now. So it'll probably be a little bit on and off right now, but I want to talk to you guys. Maybe not necessarily on the show, because we haven't got to that point yet where we have established how to do that to its fullest. But I wouldn't mind talking to, instead of speaking to somebody that's a raider in Method, I want to talk to a guildmaster on Kel'Thuzad that's had a lot of problems recently because of X, Y, or Z, because that's something that doesn't show up very much. Sure, we can talk to the big guys. Well, the big guys probably don't want to talk to us right now, let's face it. But while the big guys are, names that are recognized, it doesn't mean that they're the only people whose opinions matter. So
right.
You can find something incredibly interesting in the guildmaster that has had to rebuild his guild 3 times. Is that his fault? Maybe. Is there something else? Is he just have really bad luck? Did he move and no one came with him? These are things that I would like to talk to somebody about. So, maybe if that's something that you think you have something that's interesting to talk about, send us an email. Send us a voicemail and be like, this is me, this is who I am, this is what I've done. And I'll see if I can't either get an interview with you or get you on the show, or we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I want to hear what people are doing about gearing up. I want to hear people how they're getting their garrison resources when they run out. I want to hear about people deciding between a barn or a war mill for the garrison plots. I mean, just small questions, stuff that can create a lot of discussion. There's a lot of min-maxing I think that we can do. I think there's a lot of opinions we can all share.
Or, the difference between me, who is doing every single quest, reading every single quest, and the people that got to level 100 in 5 hours.
Ooh.
That is a very stark difference there, and that would be a very interesting conversation of why you did this, why I'm doing this, stuff like that. There's tons of things that are interesting that never make it onto the regular rotation of a normal show. So we're shooting to be the variable, the difference. So if you got something interesting, if you think it's something that we should just talk about, send it to the mailbag. If you think it's something that you would want to come on and talk about, or I can personally interview you, because honestly, times as a whole are hard to set up, or maybe one or two of us can get in there sometime, let us know. That way we can bring you in and actually bring the world around us, that all of these people that love this game together, and actually talk to everyone of every shape and size, no matter where they're from, rather than just Blizzard devs.
Yeah, well said, man.
And that's our goal. So, I mean, if you agree, awesome. If you don't, let us know why, or you just turn it off right now. I'm glad you listened this far. If you don't want to because we're horrible or because you don't agree, that's fine. Let me know. If you don't let me know, I can't fix it. That's what you got to do. That's all we have for the mail today, though. Hopefully you guys will send us some mail so that we'll actually have something next time that is less than just, introductions and just me spouting my mouth off. So that we can actually have a little bit of feedback from you guys and see what kind of questions you might have for us. And it doesn't have to be big. It can be small. But we're going to move into our review section now, and we'll give you a little taste of what this is going to be like. Welcome to the review section. This week on the review section, we've kind of just been picking and choosing it at our leisure. I mean, we haven't really picked anything out of reason or anything so far. We've done several test episodes, and we've just picked one. We decided we would go with a Burning Crusade dungeon as a little bit of a throwback to Outlands, since we're all running around what Outlands was 35 years ago, and we've settled upon Shadow Labyrinth. Akandun is a former Draenei holy site and horde fortress in the middle of the Bone Waste in Outland's Terakar Forest. This is, Spires of Iraq right now? Right. And it was a hallowed ground until the Shadow Council took it over, which we won't talk about in the story of what's happening right now, but they summoned an extremely powerful demon as old as time itself and destroyed half of the Terakar Forest in the process. This is why the Akandun is broken. This is why it's blown up compared to what you see in the expansion now. Ethereal suck the arcane energy from the Mana Tombs, the Burning Legion harvest souls inside the Aconite Crypts, and Archaeo Zealots work dark magic in the Sethic Halls. But the Shadow Council currently plots its domination of all of Outland from within the Shadow Labyrinth. We're going to be splitting the review section into 3 different parts, and then we'll give a final grade, which will be somewhere between F and A, with possible A's and minuses. We're going to be splitting it into ambience, gameplay, and lore, because these seem to be the things that make up everything within a dungeon, within a zone, within whatever it is we're reviewing. You can stick these 3 things together, and that makes it what it is. So, ambience is things like the music, the appearance, things that are around, what you see, all that kind of different stuff. Gameplay, what you're interacting with, the bosses, the trash, the quests. And then lore, obviously, is there any story in it? And if there is it relevant? And we'll start with ambience. Guys, first take on it.
Well, the first take is that you have a kind of challenge where you have to create 3 dungeons that are all reminiscent of the same architecture. I mean, you have 3 wings of the same giant temple building and or city, I guess. I don't know what this thing actually was, a giant temple, I suppose. And you have to have each wing with its own kind of feel. You have the east wing with the Arakoa. You have the ethereals. You have the undead. And then the Shadow Council. How do you make it, different enough? How do you maintain enough of the same themes to keep it kind of cohesive? I think they did a pretty good job in this one. It all boils down to pretty much the architecture and the layout, which is pretty much the same between all of the wings.
Yeah, and while they're all the same, they put different mobs in each of them. Because, Sethic Halls is all the Arakoa, the bird people. Mana Tombs is... Wait, isn't Mana Tombs... No, Mana Tombs is there. And Aconite Crypts is there, and there's demons in there. And then you have what we're reviewing now, the Shadow Labyrinth, which is full of primarily orcs. And a few demons, but primarily orcs. And it's a whole bunch of demons. Demons. Tell what I'm thinking about. It's a whole bunch of orcs that are members of the Shadow Council. And so that's how they made them different, is that they made each race essentially have its own dungeon. They're all very beautiful, though, in their own way. I mean, they all look relatively exactly the same, looking at them as a whole, but their style is very unique. As for what it was, Akandun is the Draenei burial grounds. It was like their giant catacomb crypt thing. And in Outlands and the Burning Crusade, a whole bunch of other things got in there and desecrated the place.
Yeah, they did a really good job with the visual design of the instance, I think, especially with making it look... it looks like a dilapidated place that hasn't been cared for in a long time, but it still looks very lived in. You've got all the little things sitting in the corner where you have sleeping places and little shelters for where the orcs live. And then, of course, the massive piles of bones that are there for reasons I don't entirely understand, but are probably a serious hygiene issue. And they've done a really good job with taking the basic Akandun style and making it very specific to the Shadow Council. And it looks really good in that respect.
With the everything that's around, though, like you were talking about with the skulls and stuff like that, there's also spider webs, and is this just normal for bad guys to just stand around in horribly gross places? If I was a horribly evil dude, Black Temple, in all honesty, is pretty well preserved. I mean, a lot of it's broken up and stuff, but Illidan's kept the place pretty clean.
I think that was Kelthas' doing.
Oh, maybe, yeah. He's kind of a pretty boy, isn't he? But at the same point, though, is this just a bad guy thing of just live and just run down places?
I think when a bad guy has a lair, they have an evil agenda that takes up a lot of their time.
So it's just not worth cleaning?
Think about it. On the other hand, you got to think about it like this. like I said, it's a hygiene issue. If you have a lot of, bones come from corpses, so where you see a pile of bones, there was previously a pile of corpses. So I've got to wonder how the Shadow Council is keeping from having just epidemics of disease wiping them out.
They're all infused with fel energy. You can't make a demon sick. So I mean, how you planning on doing that?
It seems like your sickness is another person's an opportunistic villain's experiment, right?
Yeah, right. Oh man, he's experiencing horrible nausea. I wonder what happens if I infuse him with an imp. Oh, that made his head explode. That's unfortunate. Well, throw him on the pile. Bring me the next rather ill being. Well, and blending this into lore a little bit, they were doing a whole bunch of stuff with harvesting souls and stuff there, and I guess it was pretty time constrained with what they were doing and what was happening. So it might have just been, toss this over there. We got other things to worry about.
Yeah, I think the skeletons are probably animated too, right? So they're taking big piles of bones and then making skeletons out of them. That happens in the second boss's lair, at least, or the third boss's rather.
Right. All in all, though, I really enjoyed that. There's a lot of color in it, surprisingly, for it to be a old, rundown crypt graveyard thing. The Shadow Moon people have really my favorite color is blue and purple, and so they have lots of blues and purples. So this makes me happy. And it was just interesting because there's a bunch of imps dancing around, and it made me laugh because at one point there is a fel reaver, whatever the dog thing is that's anti-magic that warlocks can summon. I don't know.
Right.
I don't have a warlock. There's one of those that's chasing an imp all over the room, and I just stood there and watched it, and I just thought it was one of the funniest things ever. It's one of those small little things that Blizzard adds just on its own.
Yeah, and he will pull that entire side of the room with a pad if you aggro him. Pain in the ass.
Yeah, which I got something to say about that once we hit gameplay. But I really think that ambience, though, it was pretty good. I'm going to sit with right around probably a B. What about you, Evan?
I give it an A. I mean, I think the color palette's great for the theme. It really pulls across that kind of shadowy nightmare, thing. You know exactly what to expect if you see a tent with a purple cloth on top. I mean, we're associating it more after Cataclysm with the Twilight Hammer, but back in the day in the Burning Crusade, that was demons and warlocks, and you're going to expect a shadow bolt to hit you in the face if you're near one of those things. I think with the staging and the storytelling woven into the scenery, I think it all pulls together a pretty sweet story. It doesn't have very many mistakes, nothing glaringly obvious. It doesn't break my immersion at all.
And it actually holds up pretty well. I mean, the textures really, even though they're 8 years old, they don't really hit you that hard because
absolutely,
it's smooth stone textures, which live up pretty well because they're pretty simple. What about you, Florian? Where are you sitting?
I think it's a solid B. It's very well designed, and it does the job that it needs to do by letting you know who's there and what's going down very quickly with just one glance. I, however, feel that it's not deserving of a much higher thing like an A because it's not instantly memorable. For example, if I say Ice Crown Citadel, there's a certain aesthetic that immediately comes to mind in the mind of the player. If I say Molten Core, exactly. If you name a particular instance that has a really memorable aesthetic design, the person will immediately have that design pop in their head. However, with this place, I can say Shadow Labyrinth, and there's nothing super memorable, nothing that really pops out and is super memorable about it.
Right on. So we'll average the ambience out at a B+. Transitioning over into gameplay, though, this is about the bosses and about abilities and movement and just the actual what you're actually doing there rather than what's around you. Florian, first take.
I like the trash. It's not something I get to say very often, but the trash has lots of abilities. There are assassins that come out of nowhere and attack you. There are enemies that can mind control you. There are healers. There are mobs that can summon other mobs. It requires you to actually think about what you're doing and take out mobs in a certain order.
The mobs are also really tightly packed in some places, which makes you have to be extremely careful.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's trash, but it's not inconsequential trash. you have to actually make an effort. I would say the trash is actually, in my opinion, harder in this dungeon than the bosses are. Well, most of the bosses. The bosses aren't that complicated. They have fairly simple mechanics. Murmur, easily the hardest boss in the area. But if
we're
you've
gonna
got these...
save. I want to actually move Murmur to his own section because there's things about him for every section, ambience-wise, lore-wise, gameplay-wise. So we're just gonna move him to a little bonus area right at the bottom.
Okay, we'll Murmur later on then. I also like that there's a good variety of enemy types. You have enemy warriors, enemy warlocks, enemy demons, enemy undead. It's not like a lot of dungeons where there's just one or two types of enemies being thrown at you. Like you're fighting a ton of warriors, or you're fighting a ton of druids, or a ton of beasts. There's a good variety, and that keeps things interesting and makes it a little more fun going through there multiple times, as you often have to do with dungeons.
It improves immersion to where it's not just slaughtering a whole bunch of things that all look the same.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'll agree that the trash was very good. The thing that was odd about it, though, is I felt like in the beginning, there's a whole bunch of trash. And then after the second boss, there's, like, none. There's, like, one piece, and then, like, a small pack of 4, and then, a small pack of 3. And
you're forgetting that after the second boss, there's that room with some pretty tough skeletons. Am I right? Or am I thinking of Malkanite Crypts?
That's
where you have a room... Yeah, go ahead. Before Warple, right? Yeah, you have the ogre boss, and then when you clear him, you go into really long corridors that all have like mobs that are padding back and forth in a big line that are 4 or 5 strong apiece. And I think that the game is still it's kind of picking the pets out and trying not to get a huge amount of aggro. You have giant piles of skeletons on either flank. You're still trying to pull carefully, only now you have patrols to worry about that are a little bit more dangerous.
Right. And I don't know, maybe I'm just used to dealing with stuff like that, so it seemed much more spread out to me, to where there was less trash than normal. But
the pack, yeah, go ahead. The pack density really goes down a little bit because that room right before the ogre is like maybe 6 different poles that are all right on top of each other.
Right. And so it's just something that I noticed. It felt to me like trash went from lots of tightly packed trash to easy to dispatch, spread out trash, which it kind of helped change the pace a little bit. You know, oh man, there's this big wall that I hit right as I got in, and then after that it was like, oh well, now I'm just getting to crush through it a little bit because I broke the initial line, and then you hit significantly more later. So it gave it a little bit of pacing, but it still felt weird to me. Like, why is everyone established at the front door or the back door, and there's just left all this open space with like one demon in the middle?
True. Another thing about the first boss, how he spawns all of the tiny packs of casters are suppressing him. When you kill the last pack, he comes out and starts running around the room. You have to be really careful because the kind of intuitive progression through that room is to kill A, B, C, D, E, F, and then when you kill the last group, that's exactly where the boss is and exactly where he spawns. So if you're not prepared for it, all of a sudden you've got boss aggro. So it requires a little bit of caution there. And I like designs that make you kind of stop and think before you just run head first into it.
I found the bosses, besides Murmur, to be, the first 2 especially, to be just complete jokes. Weak abilities, very irrelevant bosses, just straight up tank spank, smack it, you're dead, awesome, sweet, moving on. The third boss, he died quickly, so unfortunately the things that would have made him really good just didn't matter. And this is a problem with dungeons as a whole. You know, if they don't have raid boss health, they just die, and then they don't get to be relevant. So whatever was unique about them just falls off. Because he summons ads, and they have on... I did it on Heroic. And on Heroic, they have like 2,000 life. Well, even on Heroic, though, they're pretty easy to dispatch before they get to him. Because if they get to him, they'll heal him for like 5% each. And they also give him a buff that increases his damage, which it would be really interesting if this had more of like a Lady Vaj sense to it, in which at a certain point they're just going to get to him because they either start moving quicker or there's more of them. But even when he gets down super low, he does summon more, but it's still just not enough. It's still too easy just to switch targets and deal with him.
I had a funny experience that relates to that when I was leveling my Brewmaster Monk. In Pandaria or Mist of Pandaria expansion through this dungeon, I actually upon completing slave pens, I think for the first time at level 62, I decided that this dungeon was so easy I could probably solo it, and soloed all the rest of the Burning Crusade dungeons with my brewmaster. Really challenging, really fun, really made me use my head. It was like a challenge mode, just barely doable. However, this boss was so hard because of those void walkers that he spawns. You have to kite them so bad all the way around the room. It took some serious thinking, probably 10 or 15 attempts for me to get this one down. So you say easy to dispatch. I say my last memory is not very easy, this guy. But yeah, it's at this point in the game, if you're running through and looking for group, it's too easy. But back in the day when you're doing this on heroic mode, you had to think about it. When you were level 70 trying to get your gear, you had to think about it. And I think that made it a little bit more relevant then.
No, definitely. Florian, gameplay grade, what you got?
Gameplay-wise, probably about a B. I would say a B plus if it were tuned for current level 70s, but it's just not.
And Evan?
I gave this one an A in gameplay as well, especially because of Blackheart the Insider. When he mind controls the entire party, makes them fight one another, there's nothing anybody can do. It just except cheer their guy on. I want to take out my healer. I want to take out my rogue, you know. It just makes it fun, and I think this is a fun dungeon. Really cool stuff. Again, Murmur we'll talk about. I think it was all hit on all cylinders. A plus.
He must not mind control when you're by yourself, because I went in on a level 70 that was old and soloed it, and he didn't mind control me.
Nope. You have to have more than one person in your party to mind control.
Okay, so if I would have known that, this would have been a little bit more interesting. But I actually soloed it on a level 70 mage that a friend of mine had sitting around from Burning Crusade days that he just abandoned. But it was equipped with like Black Temple gear, but I was like, it should still be alright, you know?
Right.
And
go ahead.
And it was still like pretty good. I mean, it was still a level 70, going in there by itself on heroic, but I didn't realize he mind controlled people.
Yeah, this is in an era where there's a lot of kill the shades of your teammates, kill the shade that spawns, mind control one person, bring them down to 50% health. We never see this anymore where everybody's mind controlled, everybody's fighting, and then you just kind of hope you guys don't kill each other. It just made it really fun, honestly. I have great memories of playing that dungeon.
Or you're chaotic evil and you're hoping you get the killing blow on everyone else.
I think everybody is thinking that, actually.
Me, personally, I'm going to give it a C. I feel as though the bosses were just too weak to hold up to allow their abilities to be relevant. Even with the new knowledge of this mind control thing, I still have to give it a C, and I'm only giving it that because of Murmur, which we'll talk about at the end, because he is tied to the dungeon in every way. He even has very unique things that affect the ambience. So even with Murmur, I have to give gameplay a C. So that puts the gameplay at a flat B. Moving into lore, if you're not a lore buff, I'm sorry. We all at some level enjoy the lore. I personally love the lore. I know Florian's real big on it. Evan's not quite as big of a lore buff as me and Florian. He still enjoys it though, when this is part of something that can affect a dungeon. And people say, some people care it's only about the numbers, but as a whole, I feel that Warcraft does care about the lore, and that's what made things like Icecrown Citadel such a big deal. So we are going to touch on the lore. Did you guys do the quests that were inside?
Well, recently, no, and I think I haven't done this dungeon in like explicit detail since the old model of things in the Burning Crusade, where you had to do the entire Terakar Forest quest line to get to the quest to go to the dungeon. It wasn't just put at the very beginning.
Well, and also the big door to get into Shadow Labyrinth, you had to get a key to get inside, didn't you?
Yeah, it used to be locked. Exactly.
Yeah, it was actually very convenient for me since I'm running through on a new character who never did anything in the BC times.
So you did get to do the quests?
I did not actually do the quests. I just ran through and fought everybody. At this point, I don't think the quests are really that relevant anymore. I honestly think the quests leading up to it in BC were probably more relevant than the few quests you have now in the dungeon itself. And it's true in general for most of the dungeons.
Well, there's one thing that I noticed. One of the quest givers, it's not attached to any quest in particular. It's just something he says when you click on him, and when you can click the little thing, I would like this quest. He tells you that what's going on in the Shadow Labyrinth has already been brought to the council at Shatrath, and Shatrath's higher-ups are ignoring it. And so the people of Lower City are trying to take care of it themselves, and that's why that's why it is what it is. With what's happening in this dungeon, I do not understand why Shatrath would be ignoring it.
Yeah, every wing in this dungeon contributes to your Lower City reputation, and there's a big Lower City quest line, especially with the Auchenai crypts as well. I guess these aren't the Highborn Draenor, these are the Broken Draenor, if they exist in Draenor as well at the time, that are kind of taking charge, protecting their ancestors, maintaining the sanctity of this old temple.
It just seems odd to me that they're ignoring it. Like, there is very relevant things that happen in every wing of this, and the Lower City is doing what it can to take care of it, but why in the world would the Upper City not care?
It really doesn't make sense. Not only considering the fact that there are atrocities being committed here, but because you have massive threats, especially the Shadow Council. The Shadow Council, I mean, they literally blew up about half of that zone, just doing their shenanigans. And Akandon is not a place that's very far from Shattrath. It's pretty close. So you would think that something right in the neighborhood that's a major security threat would be a high priority, and they're just ignoring it. And that's something that's always baffled me as well. I can understand ignoring, say, the Black Temple, because that's
adorable.
pretty far away.
You have a piece of candy?
But Akandon's pretty much next door.
Well, the only thing, I mean, I didn't play to the very end of the Burning Crusade, but I remember that Adal was giving me quests with Tempest Keep. Were they more concerned about Kael'thas and the Blood Elves?
Maybe. That's a good point. It's hard to say. I mean, because of the limitations of the game. I mean, Stormwind has like 250,000 people or whatever. We see like 50. And Stormwind is huge. And Shatrath is the same thing. But we don't actually get a very clear representation of how big of a force Shatrath has. So, I mean, like you said, maybe Kael'thas was the bigger threat. And the meddlings in blown up Auchendoun just didn't matter at the time. But it still seems odd that they didn't do anything.
Yeah, maybe they were letting the Lower City kind of take care of it because you had Manitombs. The Consortium was trying to nudge out or elbow out the competition, the competing ethereals that were occupying that space. You have the rogue Arakoa that are trying to butt out the Arakoa that have taken up residence in Sketis Halls, maybe. You have the old Lower City Draenei that are trying to reclaim the Auchenai crypts for themselves. I mean, maybe it's just getting taken care of by itself.
Maybe. Go ahead.
What surprised me was that they didn't send the players to go over there, because you've got a whole bunch of adventurers just coming through the Dark Portal to do whatever we felt like doing at the time, and they could easily have just said, "Hey, we can't spare forces to go deal with this. You're not doing anything right now. Go down there and fight those guys." That's all they had to do, was just like give one guy from Shattrath a quest who isn't from Lower City to send you in that direction, and they didn't. And I wonder if that was intentional.
Yeah, it just seems odd, and maybe it's just because there's too many things happening there, or maybe with as much diversity as that there is in there between the different races, maybe they're like, maybe they'll just all fight and we won't have to worry about it. But
Seems probable.
Yeah, a couple things that I noticed. All over that dungeon, there's boxes with Horde symbols on them. Like, all of their supply crates have the Horde symbol on them.
Well, it says in one hut over here that used to be a Horde outpost. I think it just might have been one of the uses as different factions have kind of vied for the, to use the space. You've got the Shadow Council in there now, but before that, what was it being used for? Maybe the Fel Horde or Black Hands troops and stuff.
Where does it say that it was a Horde outpost?
I'm finding it again over here.
Auchendoun itself was a Horde fortress. Okay.
Yeah.
And that was before the portal closed the last time. So
that would have probably been before they blew the place up.
Yeah, that would have been during the initial... That would have been way back when. Like, back when the Horde was initially first taking out the Draenei and what have you.
Right, so this is not addressed, though, which is kind of strange. If you're playing at the time in that era, where do you find that information? Where do you find that explanation? I don't know.
And that's why I was confused initially, because I was like, what? Why? Why? Because the Shadow Council isn't Horde. They're orcs, but I guess they're technically members of the old Horde, so they would still have that old symbol, but that was just confusing for me initially. But I guess that's because now we live in a time where we have our Horde and the old Horde and the Iron Horde, but we only ever see our Horde with our Horde symbol.
Right, these days, but yeah, sure, in Hellfire Citadel is a lot of iterations of that crate with that symbol on it. Just the Fell Horde. What did they even call them back then? I forget.
Fell Orcs?
The what they call their Horde, the true Horde, Ren Blackhand. I forget who was in charge over there, the Hellfire Citadel.
Ooh, I don't know. I think it might have just been the true Horde.
We're the real Horde. Here's our Horde symbol. It's the same. That's not copyright infringement. Don't worry.
Can they do that? That would be hilarious. Sorry, you were taken down by lawyers. All in all, though, I'm going to move this little section right here into talking about Murmur, which is the Codex of Blood. But all in all, lore for me as a whole really got like a D. It was, especially because the first boss, Ambassador Helma. Ambassador is a really strange title that I don't think I've ever seen with a demon before. And just a lot of it just felt very weak, and it just felt very awkward to me. So yeah, I'm gonna have to give it a D on lore. There's such better lore that we found in such other places, and I think that might have been because this dungeon was kind of like trying to establish its own lore, but it just still felt weak. Where are you at, Evan?
Yeah, I'm with you there. D minus. I mean, mostly because I'm kind of tired of this archetype of go into this dungeon. Oh, look at the end. They've summoned a giant something, and you have to kill it. It seems like Belly the Beast go and knock out all their lieutenants and kill the giant creature they created. I've seen that in the Botanica, the Black Fathom Deeps. You're going in the Shadow. I think it's still the Shadow Council, or is it the Twilight Hammer? But Fathom Deeps in the old iteration and the new iteration, they're summoning a thing. Go in there, kill them, kill the thing. It didn't really bring anything new to the table that excited me.
Don't you wish that once we could actually stop them from summoning something? We're always late. Every time.
Dead. Yeah.
No matter what, we're always late. We never make it there in time. The thing's already summoned, and then we have to kill it. While that might be more interesting from like a gameplay perspective, I'm really tired of being late.
Well, I mean, look at it like this. If you come late, they don't summon it. If they don't summon it, you can't kill it. You can't steal loot from something that you can't kill.
Gotta get those purples.
Yeah, they're summoning the monster, but they're also summoning, the
loot pinata.
The bewitching rod of the sorcerer or whatever that comes with it from the other realm.
Exit our life staff. Thank you, sir. Thank you for magically finding Velen's staff for me. Florian, what's your final grade on lore?
I don't feel as bad about it as you guys do. I'm going to give it a C. They did a generally competent job of filling the dungeon with the things that are appropriate for it lore-wise. And there were a lot of little touches. Once again, you mentioned the Horde symbols on the boxes. That's a pretty small touch. A lot of people are not going to know about the fact that Auchendon was previously a Horde area. So I feel they did an okay job with it. And when I say okay, I mean okay for BC times. It's reasonable.
Sure, and like their lore work now is fantastic. A little bit of a bonus discussion is on the final boss, which is Murmur. The Codex of Blood, which one of the quests asked you to go find and read, actually explains what Murmur is. And he is described as this awesome elemental from another world who doesn't speak because if he says a word, he's whatever that Marvel hero is that talks and blows up planets. Marvel villain, actually, maybe DC. Don't kill me for getting the wrong universe. I know there's people out there that will. And they're talking about how people tried to summon him and contain him, and he sighed, and they all died, and that's what the Shadow Council was working on. And 2 years ago, they opened a way for him to be here, and that's why half of the Terracar forest got blown up, and they're about to lose control and he's going to be loose in the world. And you get to the very end of the dungeon and there he is and he's killing people. And it's like, wait a minute. Is he actually here? Because why aren't I dead?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you got to maintain a little bit of credibility. You got to suspend your disbelief a little bit too on our side. That's our responsibility, just to say, how is this being able to exist in our realm? You know, just like when somebody casts like in the Draenor content a gravity well, and I'm getting sucked towards it, and I'm thinking, what would that look like in real life? Would I be able to exist in the same vicinity as a gravity, black hole?
You'd be terrified. I would.
I just say, oh wow, it's a giant thing. Wow, look how tall it is. Look at these awesome gameplay mechanics. He doesn't move. I mean, these are really cool, exciting things that make me use my brain to try to figure out how to beat him when the content's relevant. And I say, that's exciting. I don't really, pay too much attention to the lore. I don't get off my, it doesn't throw me I don't even know a good expression to use. It doesn't bother me too much.
No. The couple things interesting about Murmur, though, and that I don't know if you noticed, but he has a unique model. First off, I don't believe I've ever seen his model before. He's this water elemental that kind of looks like they took like the genies from Cataclysm and like stuck a Murloc skull on his head and all this kind of different stuff. He's really unique. I think the elemental guy from the fire celebration, the Midsummer Suns Festival or whatever, I think he actually shares his model, but he had a pretty unique model from what I could tell. He had very unique abilities that really, because he doesn't move, he deals abilities that are based on how far you are away from him. The other thing that I thought was very interesting, though, is that the dungeon has its own music and stuff as part of the ambience, a part of where you are. When you get to Murmur, it is dead silent. No noise at all. And that felt really cool, because it made him feel much more epic. However, he was not very epic, and did not live up to the Codex of Blood or anything else, or towards the ambience that he delivered. And so I was very disappointed.
No, he used to be cool, man. He used to be cool. There's one of those things that... Yeah, go ahead, Florian.
The thing about Murmur is his supposed extreme power brings up a lot of very odd questions. The first question is, how was the Shadow Council keeping him there? When you get near the end, you see some Shadow Council guys trying to contain him. If he's really that powerful that he can, as the Codex says, destroy entire worlds with his whispers, then how are these guys controlling him? And more importantly, how can 5 random guys just wander in there, kill everybody, and then obliterate him? I like to think Murmur isn't as powerful as the Codex claims he is, and that the Shadow Council people in the dungeon they weren't like the proper Shadow Council. They were like the guys who wanted to be in the Shadow Council, but they really, really sucked.
Yeah, maybe that's
why. So they just kind of stuck him in a corner of Akandon and just gave him this little baby's first summoning guide and said, no, this will summon a really powerful, invincible god. And
that's why Shatrath doesn't care about what's going on in the Shadow Labs. They're like, those guys are jokes.
It's the only reasonable explanation I can think of for what's going on.
I think the problem is that they summoned him too soon. Too soon.
But that brings our final score of Shadow Labyrinth to a C+. Now, this is our first review, so I mean, you might see that we might have a basis in some way, or if you see something that you don't like in this, let us know. There's always room for improvement, so if there's something you think we can do better with this segment, tell us how. Let us know. We're always looking for ways to make ourselves and the podcast better so that you enjoy it more. We give it a C+. That in no way makes it bad. A would be like, you should go play it right now. It'll probably be awesome every time you go in. That doesn't mean that a C means it's crap. It just means that it has a few things in it that make it not as good as something that would be considered gold. I would still recommend you go there. Still check it out. Pay attention. The quests are interesting. They actually have lore in them if you care about that. It's pretty well designed, good layout. There's a lot of things that hold it back, and I think that that's mostly due to its age. And I'm not even talking about old textures or anything. I'm just talking about that Blizzard was and is still learning, but they had learned significantly less than they had now when they designed this. Would you guys agree?
Yeah, its age is definitely one of the main things that hurts it. I'm sure if Blizzard did the exact same dungeon now, it would be much, much better than what we were looking at. And that, I think that also has an effect on our C plus rating, because we're looking at it through the lens of time. Right now, we're used to dungeons with bosses that have more mechanics, that are more challenging, more complex. And as WoW has aged, bosses have gotten more complex, dungeons have gotten more complex, more skill-based. So what at one time would have been hard for a group of 70s now is pretty much easier for us to play through. So that's probably going to have a big effect on our ratings.
Well, and I would say, though, that getting a C plus, almost a B, is still a testament to how good it can be if you look at it through the right eyes. Even wearing those nostalgia glasses, giving something a C plus is still pretty good, considering someone could have easily just said, this dungeon's crap, it's old, its mechanics are old, I smashed through it like it didn't exist, don't ever touch it, it's not worth your time, goodbye.
No, that's not exactly the case, and I think that, if I could have my way and they would go back and revamp all of these dungeons, all the classic 1 to 80, 85 even, make them so that they're at least a little bit challenging, at least they slow you down a little bit, even in non-heirloom gear, that would make a huge difference, because if the abilities were relevant and it was tuned right, Murmur isn't a tank and spank. You gotta pay attention. There are complicated dispels. You can't dispel somebody when they're nearby other people, if I remember correctly. Throws you up in the air and does AoE damage. I mean, these are mechanics that still, I think, hold up and make the game interesting, but for the numbers just throw it entirely into the realm of nonsense. It's just too easy. You don't have to stop, and I think that can't be purposeful. They can't be doing that on purpose. They can't be saying, this old content's irrelevant, let's just get them through it as fast as possible. That doesn't seem true to form for the company.
Well, Blizzard does focus a lot more on endgame, and endgame is where a lot of people feel the game is at, and this is no longer endgame, and in a way it never was, because it's just a 5-man dungeon. So that's just one of those things. It's one of the limitations of dungeons themselves. I mean, if this was a raid, it probably would have got a better grade, because a lot of things would have been more relevant and just designed a little bit stronger, because they were designed to be raid content, which is endgame. Whereas, even though this had a heroic version, it still wasn't quite the same as, the raids themselves, which were especially during that time, the real game. That was what it was about.
Well, I mean, I'm going to contest you there, because I played during the Burning Crusade, and that was during a different kind of era in this game where, I mean, I didn't step into a raid except for a couple times. Karazhan was the kind of casual encounter. That was back when raids were still 25 people, except for Karazhan. And a good number of the people, their end game was heroics, and maybe Karazhan, and maybe the odd pickup group for Magtheridon's or Gruul's Lair once in a while. I mean, it wasn't like the landscape today where you have looking for raid dungeons and everybody's going into all the raids. It wasn't spoon-fed. You had to really work hard, and only the elite people were getting past the heroic dungeons, I feel.
But in comparison to how much you have endgame now, even in Mists of Pandaria, but with Warlords really, I mean, things like battle pets, your garrison, there's lots of things now endgame compared to back then, which was, if you weren't raiding, I guess you had to do the 5-man dungeons on heroic. Otherwise, the only endgame content was raids. That was all there was. Unless you were PvPing.
Oh yeah, that was first iteration of arenas too in that expansion.
Right.
Big deal.
But if you're starting to wonder how long we're going to yak for, you will not have to listen for too much longer. And that brings us to the end, everybody. Thank you for sticking with us all the way through it. If you have any suggestions or anything like that, please send them to us. Let us know. Or if you want to talk to us, let us know. The general podcast contact is thecastbar@gmail.com. You can send us a tweet at Castbar Podcast, or call us at 508-738-2278. All of our bumpers, aside from the little noises such as the gong and the fanfare that you just heard, all of the actual music is done by a gentleman named Kevin MacLeod. You can find his work at incomtech.com. It's all royalty free. You can buy it and not have to credit him, or you can do what I'm doing now under the Creative Commons license and tell everyone that he made it, and then you can use it. If you want to get a hold of me personally, you can direct an email to my name, to the general at thecastbar@gmail.com, or I have my own Twitter at Schwahn Michael. Evan, where can people find you?
Well, they can always send an email over to thecastbar@gmail.com. Also, they can reach me on Twitter at EDCWow.
Right on. And Florian, where are you at on setting up your public communication network?
I don't believe in public communication. I don't do that sort of thing. If people really want to talk to me, they can send an email to the podcast. If they don't want to, that's okay too. I'm not going to lose sleep over it.
Harsh. Cold-blooded. Thank you.
Just give me your
everyone,
radio
for
frequency,
coming.
man.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. We're going to be shooting for doing this every week for as long as we can do it. We've talked it over, and our schedule's set up very well for us to do this. We'll be recording on Sundays. If you are curious now, we do not currently have plans for a live show, as this is episode number 1. Calm down. We will talk about that if it becomes something that actually looks more plausible. For now, though, everyone, thank you so much. Have a good day, and just enjoy Warlords into the fullest, and I wish that your queue times are shorter.
You are out of time.